Welcome to another episode of the No Ceilings Podcast. I am Tyler Metcalf, joined as always by Tyler Rucker. Rucker, what a beautiful week it is. How are we doing?
It's a beautiful week. It's another glorious week to talk NBA draft and basketball in general. I'm doing fantastic. I'm coming up, just battling, dealing with some of these withdrawals. I know we're going to talk plenty about that, Metcalf, but I'm doing good. How about yourself, sir? How are we hanging in there?
I'm fantastic. I have no crushing sports defeats to recover from. I'm sure you can't relate to that at all. Instead, just some
I
of my
didn't get
favorite
a minute in. I didn't get a minute in.
How are we coping? The people want to know. They've been asking.
Yeah. I'm okay because I've put all of my energy into the draft now.
Oh, so just denial.
Denial for sure.
Nice.
I think
Healthy.
I'll go out and say it. Yes, you should re-sign Jaylen Brown. Yes, Missoula should be back. Brad Stevens confirmed both of those things today. So yes, see, I'm also paying attention. I think they're fine. They're still young. Jaylen Brown obviously has got to work on his handle this offseason. He's a hard worker. He's a smart player. I think he'll accept the challenge, and I think Boston's going to be fine. I'm not worried. I think Missoula needs a veteran staff. A lot of people forget Damon Stoudemire left the middle of the year. They've tough year for him. So I like where Boston's at. I think they'll be on the revenge tour next year, and Jaylen Brown will probably be possessed out of his mind, and it's going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. Everyone's going to be okay. I feel like, I'm in the office with Robin Williams, RIP, and he just keeps saying it's not your fault to the Celtics. So, we're going to be fine. We're going to figure it out. We're going to have a little cry, and then
Okay, so Jaylen Brown for Karl Anthony Towns.
No,
cool.
No
Perfect.
deal.
Love
no
it.
Deal. No deal.
Just unite Anthony Edwards and Jaylen Brown, two Georgia kids.
I saw Ant-Man tampering, so tell him to calm that down. No, so but let's focus here. Yeah, I'm doing okay, everybody. The draft's here. We got rumors. We got buzz. We've got draft guides. Shout out to everyone that's purchased the draft guide. I'm excited.
Yes. So before we get into the early entry decisions and some of the guys we think are going to be the biggest wild cards in this draft, this year's draft guide is live. If you haven't seen or heard or purchased yet, help us out. It'd be greatly appreciated if you have $10 to spare over at noceilingsnba.bigcartel.com. It looks awesome. A lot of work went into it. The reception so far has been incredible. If there's anything you don't like on it or have constructive criticism, feel free to reach out to me directly. And, we're always happy to improve for next year. But we are thrilled with how it looks and just everyone's support so far. So if you've been living under a rock in terms of the No Ceilings world this week, please go check it out. Otherwise, we just still have the continuous slew of awesome work going up daily at noceilingsnba.com. But enough of that, unless, Rucker, did you have something?
No, it's been awesome. Thank you for everyone for the support. I think we were a little shocked compared to the first year. The growth has been just awesome. So thank you guys. We've been really, really happy about that. I know we're already planning year 3 of what we want to make different and do. And we're excited. And it's been awesome. But everyone that, if you haven't gotten it, like Metcalf says, go to noceilingsnba.com. We're going to start pumping out some serious stuff. This is the time of the year where we unleash the sharks, which is us talking about the big names, the lottery guys. Be on the look. There's probably going to be a surprise as you guys are listening to this tomorrow morning. Yeah, I'm really excited. This is where things, we open the floodgates. I'll, open up the gates of hell and let's party. Let's get weird. We got less than almost 20 days. As we're recording this, 21 days, so it's just 3 weeks. Crazy math. But yeah, I'm really excited for this episode. I think we're going to have some fun with this one.
Yeah, so we just passed one of the bigger the final big deadlines in the draft cycle, and that was the withdrawal for early entrant prospects. Rucker, we're just going to kind of bounce around here. Who stood out to you? Who surprised you? Whose decision did you like? Who did you not like? Take it any direction you want.
We have to let's just rip the Band-Aid off here. People are our followers know we're tweeting both of us Metcalf, and they were like, pour one out for No Ceilings. We're talking about Adembona of UCLA, and we're talking about Trey Alexander of Creighton.
RIP. Not
RIP.
really.
Not really. Not really. I'm just going to play the scientist in the background. I've been making a joke to Metcalf. So we have to have the Adembona, Trey Alexander little moment, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
it was tough. It was tough. I think all seriousness, let's put the jokes aside. All seriousness, I think it was the right call for both because I think they're going to skyrocket upwards next year. I'm really excited about it. I just thought they were going to be some really big potential steal in this year's draft. So what did you think? Did you like the decision from both of them?
Yeah, I mean, it from what we had heard, I think those are two guys who really wanted to stay in this year's draft, but it just seems like the feedback wasn't there where it made sense for them to do that and take that big of a risk with their career. I mean, going back to Creighton, going back to UCLA, those are two really, really good programs, especially with NIL money and just ability to grow. And, you know, next year's draft is looking a little weaker. You know, that's too early to make outlandish statements or anything on it. But compared to this one, they're going to enter next season in really good standing in terms of preseason rankings. With that, though, comes really high expectations, and they have to show growth in their game, whether it's for Bona, whether it's even more consistency and reliability on the defensive end with a sprinkling of offensive improvement, or, you know, with Trey, it's just even a tighter handle and better shooting and all, you know, all that kind of stuff. They can't fall into this trap of just going back and doing the same thing. That's the risk with all these guys when they go back. But me and you are always supportive of guys who decide to go back because it's a great opportunity to grow. And for guys who, if they would have gone in the mid to late second round, most of those guys don't get the opportunity to really get the resources put into them to improve their games where they need to. And they're just kind of thrown in the G League and told to figure it out, or put on the end of the bench and told to figure it out. This way, they're going to come back as one of the focal points for their programs and really be given the opportunity to grow their games where they need to and improve that feedback. I think they're both fringe lottery guys right now for me entering next season. A lot can change, but I think they have a really good shot to be like first round locks next year.
I think Trey for sure was probably looking at a late first, early second, you know, this year. And if you're pushing all the chips into the middle of the table, you're thinking, okay, I got a shot at getting into that top 20 next year. I think absolutely. And it's not just the questions surrounding the draft next year. I mean, obviously there is a little bit of doubt. I think the draft next year is going to be deep now because of all these returners. But I think Trey's going to have the potential to really jump up because of what he offers on the table. He's going to be this lengthy combo guard that can impact the game in a number of different ways. Bona really could explode. I mean, I think that could be one that we're talking about. Like some people are like, oh, probably a potential first round pick. No, I think he's going in the first next year. If he takes that next step forward, it's just how high can he go? And I'm really excited about him. I think a big part of this was the injury. You know, he had a bang up shoulder. He didn't really play a bunch in the tournament. Prevented him from playing and working out throughout this whole process. That's really hard to kind of just be like, okay, I can't show you my game, so I kind of got to just go off faith. And then, you know, he was probably looking at an early second round, unless some team was just like, hey, we absolutely love him. Let's try to take him in the first. And I'm sure some team was trying to say, hey, stay in. But I think he's going to skyrocket with another good year. So anybody else for you that you kind of were Zach Edey a little bit? I think caught my
Zach
attention.
Edey, I kind of get, though. I think the NIL money, an opportunity for him just going back to Purdue and just dominate again.
Yeah.
I was a little surprised, but I get it. The Duran Holmes one really surprised me.
Yeah, that one got me a little bit of a whoa when I read that. I was like, okay, all right, going back. It's funny with the tweet or the announcements on Twitter for everyone that wasn't like following it closely. It's just like you're always looking for like one word where it's either like returning or staying. So I'm just like finding the word. It's like a treasure chest or treasure map. Holmes, I think it's the right decision.
Probably.
Hopefully, probably. Dylan Mitchell, I think it's the right call.
I am praying that he's allowed to do literally anything on offense next year.
I just need his first game. He takes a 3.
Yeah.
And
Just
then
like when he catches it in the corner, it's something like look at the rim at least. Don't just immediately go for the dribble handoff. Do anything. That would be nice. Because his shot looked ugly, but he was shooting it decent at the combine.
Look better at the combine. I think that's the smart thing with those guys is you start buzzing out a little bit. So you need to go back and take your game to another level. Friend of the program, Dylan Jones. That one surprised me a little bit, but I also think it's brilliant because now he's on the radar.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's gonna have a lot of eyes on him.
Yeah, he's gonna have a lot of eyes. So go bet on yourself. Shout out Dylan. I think he could have rolled with it, but I think that's a lot of courage of being like, I'm going back for one more year, see if I can take it up another level. He's gonna have fans now because people are gonna be intrigued.
The Kaluma and Kalkbrenner ones didn't really surprise me.
No, I think that was the right call by Kaluma.
The Judah Mintz one surprised me a little bit, but I think it was 1,000% the best decision that he could have made.
Yeah, I think he should have always gone back. I'm not trying to, I just thought you have way too much to gain.
Yeah, and going back. And now he gets to go back in a backcourt of him and JJ Sterling is going to be a lot of fun next year.
Yes.
I'm praying that they play man defense. I'm not going to hold my breath though. Couple other ones. Tristan Da Silva going back to Colorado, Naquan Tomlin going back to Kansas, both Terrence Shannon and Coleman Hawkins going back to Illinois. Those surprised me a little bit, but again, I'm guessing the feedback just wasn't where they wanted it to be. I didn't necessarily have a draftable grade on them, but I get it.
In the same boat. Coleman Hawkins was having some fun on Twitter with that announcement. He had way too much fun, but shout out Coleman. Appreciate it. Come on the pod next year.
A couple of the surprisers who stayed in. Julian Phillips. I loved
it. Loved it. I'm in on the Julian Phillips Express. Anytime you could say I'm not going back to play for Rick Barnes, you're going up on my board. All serious.
Where do you have him?
I have him at 36. I love Julian Phillips. And for everyone that's wondering, the person we're probably going to talk about next, I have him right behind him at 37. So I think Phillips is going to be a little bit of a keep your eye on him on draft night. I think there's some team that's going to be very intrigued with that athleticism, tools, the defensive ability now. And I think there's some offensive game that he didn't get to show.
Yeah, I have him at 25.
Love that. See, I need to go back and drink that Kool-Aid. But gosh, I'm already
just the athletic tools, the defense, and then just going back to what he showed on offense in high school. I think there's a lot more there that he can build on and really utilize. That I know this is going to shock a lot of people, but Rick Barnes didn't let him show, which is super uncharacteristic of him. Who else? And anyone? Any other notable stay-ins for you?
I have to bring up Jordan Walsh is the guy I was hitting at. I'm not surprised. I think he created too much momentum.
Yeah.
That going back and doing that again, like I don't think he was going back and having 15 a game. I think Jordan Walsh is just going to be a guy that's like, I'm ready to come play good defense. And also, I feel like I maybe saw some comments where I was like, oh, he wasn't happy with his role last year. Like, I think he was like, I get to show what I want now and not have to just be a role player. And I was like, well, buddy, we might need to talk about that. But I think it's a good player to get in your developmental staff. I'm sure he'll be a name teams want to get, as if you could probably get fantastic value with Jordan Walsh. I like Phillips a lot. That's one of those names, like I'm adjusting my board. Me and Metcalf were talking about this before we even hit record. And I was just like, now that guys are in, I feel like you got to weigh with like, okay, there's some names leaving. There's some people overreacting about like, oh gosh, the draft got thin. And I was like, no. Like we're still pretty wide range of good talent all over the board. It's just there was some intriguing guys, going back next year, but I think now the next year's class got stronger. So that's all I
Yeah,
got.
and I think for me, it was more so that a bunch of, or not a bunch, but a good handful of guys who I could have easily seen going in the first decided to go back.
Yeah.
And that just moved a bunch of guys up into just a very kind of different tier of now where I think they could go. So that was kind of the big takeaway for me.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's tough because at times I'll put guys lower because I'm sort of in that wait and see mode of like, okay, are you really declaring? And I know people will be like, well, why would you do that? Because I'm like, well, I don't. In my big board, sometimes I lean a little bit towards like what this is where I see them at right now, and then sometimes you got to tinker with it, and you're like, okay, well, if you're making a big board, is it what you think of them now, or is it down the road? And I always try to have to remind myself, like, no, like, what am I thinking he's turning into? Because I'm trying to project, 3 years down the road, not just right this second. And that's like Julian Phillips when he just said, I'm staying in. I was like, Phillips is going to get drafted in a range where I think he's going to have a shot of really being a successful piece that is developed. So, I got him at 36. Like, I could see me moving him around 34, 33-ish, but it's also where it gets very vicious. I don't know, Metcalf. Do you ever find yourself doing that where it's kind of like you got to tinker now that like, okay, he's in. This is a name I need to really focus on. Because there's
Yeah,
just
I
guys
mean,
in my late 50s, there was guys I was like, they're going back. And then I was like, oh, whoa, okay. Like you're staying, like, let me reevaluate.
yeah, and I always try and rank them as if they're all in, regardless, even if it's a guy who I like really think is going back. I still try to rank him as if he's not and he's staying in.
Yeah.
But then, if there's a guy who says he's like, no, I'm staying in, and I'm way lower on him, then it's like, oh, okay, what am I missing? And I have to go back, and it's
Right,
like,
right.
oh, okay, so I didn't. It might be more so of I didn't necessarily take it as seriously earlier. Um, and that led to me kind of downgrading or diminishing some of what he showed. And then, it's like, oh, okay, so these flashes, I'm assuming that the feedback that you're getting on this is a little more positive than maybe I initially thought. So let's go back, rethink it, view it in a different light, and reevaluate.
You explained that much better than I did. I think that's where I'm at is like now I'm having to go back and be like, let me reevaluate my film and kind of get where I'm at. But it's just now it's like, okay, we know the names. And for
Mhm.
everyone listening, like we got one more deadline coming up. That's all the international class. It's so funny how late that deadline is because it's always just like, whoa, we're really
Yeah, it's
waiting.
like,
Like the NBA is not doing us any favors with that deadline when it comes to no ceilings and trying to get some fun content for you people. That will be June 12th, 10 days before the draft. So
plenty of time.
international guys got some time. Well, they have their season going on and all
I
that stuff.
know.
But any other names? Are you good to go?
No, I think that was kind of big picture thoughts. Oh, I'll just also shout out to Jalen Clark, friend of the program,
Okay.
staying in. But I'm sure we missed a couple names, not intentional. But before we jump into some of the biggest wild cards in this draft, let's take a quick break. All right, Rucker. So now we're going to kind of dive through just five names of guys who could be real big wild cards in this draft. And these five names, the ones that we came up with, kind of mostly range anywhere from early to late first round on our boards and most mock drafts that you'll see. And what we mean by wild card is guys who we see having an extremely high ceiling, but also a really concerning floor. So there's just a lot of variance in how their careers could go. Obviously, none of these guys are a for sure thing, but we wanted to kind of dive through some of the pros, the cons, the concerns, the flashes, the excitement of some of the bigger home run swings is another way you could put it in this draft. The first name that came up when we were compiling this list, Thompson.
Mm-hmm. I think everyone immediately is going to start groaning, and it's no. This is a positive episode. I think it's just like this. The upside is so scary with some of these guys we wanted to talk about, but this is the wild card. This is the roll of the dice. This is the, kind of bite your lip and be like, okay, you're sweating bullets, but you hope that this clicks, because if it does, it could really shift your franchise, your organization in the right way. Amen Thompson, obviously, if you've been close to the draft grind, you should know the story right now. He's one of the twin brothers, his twin brother Asar. They're both very talented. Asar, I think the shot is better. I'll just flat out say it. I think he's got a better shot right now than Amen. But I think Amen is more physically gifted when it comes to understanding how to play with speed and his burst and his God-given abilities. And the playmaking's fantastic. He has the tools to be very scary. Very, very scary. I think even without the shot, becoming or where it's at right now, I still think there's a lot of stuff that can be really put together at the next level with the good coach. And I like the defense still. I think there's a lot of flashes, but me and you have talked about him playing. I think there's a ton of flashes. And the key word is flashes. It is just how can we turn it up so it's more consistent? And I like him a lot. I've heard nothing but great things, but it's going to come down to the shot. So I don't know, where are you at? Are you still cool, or what point Metcalf in the draft, if you were like, all right, I'm in, where would you feel comfortable about being like, I'm in? Like, what's too rich for you right now? I know you're a little cooler on him, and that's fine because we need the balance of powers, but where are you at?
Yeah, so I'm probably second lowest of the no ceilings group on him, just in terms of ranking. I see the upside. Like what everyone's getting excited about, the 6'6", uber 6'7", I forget the height off the top of my head, uber athletic, playmaker. I get the excitement, and if everything goes right, he's going to be an absolute menace of a player. I just think that everything that has to go right, I think there's a lot there that has
Yeah.
to go right. And that's where, it's landing spots important for everyone who gets drafted. It's incredibly important for these 5 names that we're talking about today. And that's where I get a little hesitant about where would be best for him, because I think to really reach that ceiling, I think he's going to have to play point guard. I don't think you can put him as a wing. I think he has to have the ball in his hands and be that kind of dominant offensive hub. And just looking at Tankathon, I mean, I don't hate the fit in Houston at 4. Giving that team a playmaker with the scores and, Jabari Smith, who, I don't think either of us are out on by any means yet. Jalen Green, again, neither of us are out on, but that team needs a playmaker. And I know Şengün is an awesome passer. They need a point guard. And that, while 4 is really rich for me in terms of draft spot, from a fit standpoint, I really like it. And with that coaching staff, I think they'd be able to really hold him accountable for the first time in a few years now for him. So that would probably be the very earliest I'd be even entertaining the thought of taking him. After that, oh boy. And 7 to Indiana, I think, is really interesting. Pairing that kind of playmaking and athleticism with Halliburton in the backcourt. I think that's just kind of that could be like a fun little fire and ice kind of combination. But I think his fit is really tough. And I know when you're taking guys of his pedigree super early in the draft, you're not drafting for fit. But I think he's just the archetype of player that he is, and the weaknesses and strengths that he currently has. I think it's going to be could be really tricky.
It's going to be really fascinating. We've said this multiple times. I don't know where the team is that just says all in.
Yeah.
Because this is where I get to, like, I think he makes the most sense in Houston.
Yeah.
I think Cam Whitmore is going to have a lot of fans in Houston too.
Oh God, I hate that from a team building standpoint, though.
I do too, but I think that's where you're getting at that fourth pick is you're going to have different paths of the road you can go in. You can probably either go Whitmore with another athletic wing or forward next to Jalen Green. You can go Jarris Walker and put him as your running mate with Şengün, which I love. Or you go Amen Thompson and get yourself finally a playmaker. I think Amen needs the Rockets, and I think the Rockets need Amen. It's just is this a marriage? Is this going to work? Because there's no, I mean, they have all the pieces, the young pieces to work, and they need what Amen can do best. But are you convinced that he's the missing ingredient? And obviously, everyone's going to talk about like, oh, James Harden stuff. I don't care about James Harden stuff. We're talking about the draft. We're talking about team building. They need Amen Thompson. And if he does not go to Houston, I don't know where he goes. I really don't. And I think he's going to come into the league and be so electrifying early on because people are going to be shocked about his first step, his lethal, violent speed coming through traffic and coming down the lane. It's when teams start adjusting to him. And everyone's had that first
once we
run
get
through.
to January and there's a scouting
Yes,
report on him.
that's where I'm going to say things are going to get interesting because you can jump on everyone as a rookie and, you know, we look up and Amen had 12 points and 6 assists and 5 rebounds. Be like, hey, looks pretty good. But then teams are going to have played you and be like, okay, I know Amen's going to catch the ball and want to get into the traffic. They're going to start crowding the lane. And like you said, Metcalf, when he gets to January, things are going to get interesting. So it's just, I think he's a hard worker. I think the upside is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out
1,000%.
still, like you said, like there's a lot of questions about the other side of the fence.
All right. So there, like every workout season, there have been plenty of videos coming out of his new shooting mechanics. Where are we at?
Well, there was a video that came out, and everyone's kind of jumping about it. It's him working at his pro day workout, or not pro day workout, his workout with the Portland Trailblazers, and everyone gets a front row seat to look at it right behind his shot in the corner, and it looks a little funky. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It looks a little funky. It's low release. It's just fast. I mean, this is one thing I'm going to say. And sorry, I got distracted with a thought, which is always dangerous. But we're at the point of the year in which, like, I feel like a lot of people get angry at us when we were talking about this. And it's like now that stuff starts to come out and people are seeing what we've been talking about. It's like we're not trying to be jerks. We're just saying, like, this is what people are talking about. This is what we're seeing. And I'm hoping the shot's going to come around, but it is the one thing. Some team's going to have to be convinced it could be fine. And if Lonzo Ball could go second, then I think, Amen could be there. I think Amen will convince some team that, like, he has enough tools. We can work with this. We'll figure it out. But what about you? Where are you at?
So I'm actually not going to sugarcoat it, and
okay.
I hated it. I thought it looked so much worse. I know
what stood out to you about it worse? Because let's not let's not get too crazy.
So release point looked like it came down a lot, where he's now releasing it like from his chin, almost like it's kind of like a push shot from the middle of his face. The right arm tuck looked really aggressive. Again, some of this stuff may just be the angle of where the camera was. I remember all of the panic over the Devin Vassell videos the other year,
Yes,
or
that
a
was
couple years
fun
ago,
times.
and literally nothing changed in the shot. It was just the angle that was taken from. So if that's the case, then I'll walk all of this back. But from the angle of where that video is being taken, I thought it looked rough. The right arm tuck looked super aggressive and like he was releasing the ball from the very middle of his chest, almost to the left side. Um, it had like a new hitch like halfway up into his release. It didn't look super smooth. I don't know. I think it's going to be a really, really, really long work in progress for him. I'm praying that it gets there. I really want him to shoot it because if he does, he's going to be one of the most electric players in the league and probably an all NBA player. That's what I think the ceiling is if the shot gets to just a respectable level. Um, but whatever these changes are, he's quite a ways from that. Also, just a note on all these shooting videos, these guys aren't going to put out videos of them missing shots. So when a guy hits 4 shots in a row or a video of them hitting 15 in a row, it's probably edited.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out for that. And they're not going to show you the bad misses. They don't do it because that's not good for them. So just take it with a grain of salt. But
I'd love if someone did that one year. I'd be like, that's ballsy. Just raw video. Like, here you go. The best random side story. If you've never watched it, literally after you listen to this podcast, get off, and go to YouTube. Damian Lillard's private workout video for before he got drafted. It's one of the greatest videos of all time. I mean, that you see why Dame Lillard got as good as he is because he's just a workhorse. So sorry, I thought of that. Maybe we'll post that on the Twitter, on the line. But yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I'm still high on him. I got him at, I got him in that 6 to 8 range. I'm still there. And shocking everyone. I'm saying he needs to go 4th. And everyone's like, why did you have him 8th? And it's because I have my concerns. But I really do think there is another level in his game that is going to be unlocked. And I think, especially on the defensive side of the ball, if he buys in with that, and that's why I'm like, if he plays for Udoka, I love that potential. But we'll see. Go ahead.
All right. Let's move on to the next name on our list. Cam Whitmore, a guy that we are both very high on.
Very.
I think he has all-star upside, even, fringe all-NBA upside. But kind of conversely to Amen Thompson, I'm leaning more towards the optimistic side with him. When there is a very, very clear pessimistic or, the people who are lower on him would say realistic view on him. I'm excited about him. He would be a guy that I'd be willing to take that home run swing on. Where are you at with Cam?
I have been a big fan all year. I think I had him. I think I looked back and I had him preseason like 3rd or 4th.
Oh wow, I was pretty out on him entering the year.
Yeah, I remember this.
I'd like late teens. Oh
yeah, I remember you were really slow to warm up, and I was like, "Are you in on Whitmore yet? Why aren't you in on Whitmore?" I remember this. I think I was preseason. I was like, I think he's got the tools to kind of get up in that top 4, and then I think when he got hurt, I was like, oh, this is the worst because now he's going to be slow. And like, he doesn't seem like a guy that was going to come in and immediately drop 30. I've got him at 5. I really like Whitmore. I still love him. I still think the all-star upside is legit. Now, a lot of things need to fall in place, but like he needs to tighten the handle. The outside shot needs to become more consistent. Needs to kind of turn it up a little bit on defense. Like there's just some in-between game I think he needs to figure out. And I hate to bring my boy into this, but Jaylen Brown, I've watched Jaylen Brown throughout his whole Boston Celtics career, and the leap he made in a couple of years to where he's got now is unbelievable. And it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't a relentless worker in the offseason that trusted the path he was on. And I think that's why I'm always with these guys that come in, these athletic wings that look like they have this upside. And everyone's like, the handle, creation. It's like, they're going to get better. None of these guys are finished products. So like, I see a world in which Whitmore by year 3, we're like, my goodness, now he's legit weapon. And, we're banking on a lot of stuff. If Jaylen Brown can take that huge improvement, I see a world in which Whitmore does that. And, the only difference with him is he's, an absolute freight train coming to the basket, and he's going to be nasty. So I like him a lot, Metcalf. I really do feel that's the one I would be rolling the dice on. And I think he could go as high as 4.
Yeah, I have him at 5 on my board, and I'm just what I ended up coming around on the shot. I think he's going to shoot it fine. I don't think he's going to be a lethal shooter, but I think he'll be league average at minimum, which given his athleticism and first step and ability to just beat guys within that first step, um, is more than enough. I think he's the best athlete in this class. His combination of explosiveness and strength and power, and deceleration and balance, it's special. And I I know people are rolling their eyes given the amount conversation we just had, but what separates those two by the slimmest of margins in terms of athleticism for me is the strength. And Cam has that where he just finishes over and through guys at the rim, and Amen hasn't proven that yet. But talking about Cam, I think he has a good handle. He doesn't really do much with it. When he's just more direct with his movements with like a jab, step, and drive, I think he's way more effective. Defensively, I really like his on ball defense and think there's a lot of upside there. The problem with everything that I was just praising, though, is that it's all an individual game with him. Everything that he shines at is within his own silo. In a team concept, that's where I start getting concerned. And that's where I think the basement on him really starts to drop because the playmaking stuff has been well documented of being non-existent.
Yes.
The off-ball team defensive stuff is inconsistent, let's say. Um, so in that kind of context, if he can't grow out of that silo and really start seeing the floor and connecting with everyone else on the floor, that's where I think things really get tricky. I mean, something that me and you have said about like Scoot Henderson all year, obviously different positions, different roles and everything, but Scoot makes everyone on his team better. Brandon Miller, similar thing where he does, if the shot's not falling, he's rebounding, he's defending, he's passing. There are different areas of the game where he's making an impact and elevating the team at large. We have yet to see that from Cam. And if that doesn't really come around, that's where I think things get really tentative with him.
The problem with Whitmore is there's a lot of you can go back and forth with kind of your thinking of it. Like myself, I'll go in that same rant you just had about like, okay, the playmaking is non-existent sometimes. But I also watched that Villanova team before he took the court, and when he got there, they were so much better. And I was like, okay, is this a situation thing that we need to maybe shine a little bit more light on? Which is like this Villanova team was tough this year to watch, and I watched them way too much because I wanted to watch Whitmore. And a lot of those games, I was like, "What are we doing?" And it's just a tough situation where I could see maybe he goes to the NBA, he's around more talent, maybe that unlocks a little bit of you want to say confidence or trust when it comes to his teammates. Who knows? I think right as you're saying that though, there's a lot of areas that need to be unlocked when it comes to giving the team success. But I think individually he has the tools to be one of the top players in this draft because he has that much of an upside. And I think that's also showcasing how many layers to his game is still waiting to be discovered.
All right. So, what are some of the fits for him that you would really like or dislike?
I think still my favorite fit for him is probably Indiana. It's just, I think that 4 to 7 range, a lot of people are going to be intrigued with Whitmore. I don't know about 5. The Detroit seems interesting. I like Monty Williams going there now. So now maybe I'm like, okay, it could make some sense. But I don't know with Detroit. Like I love it. I would be like pumped if I'm a Pistons fan and they took him at 5. But I feel like that's a lot of questions on the perimeter. And they just re-signed Bojan, right?
Yeah, I think at least through next year. He might have 2 years.
Maybe I thought they gave him like a shocking extension. I know. Go ahead, Metcalf, and then I'll look that up and confirm.
No, so like The Pistons one is one that I've liked for a while. I know Corey's been lower on it. He's talked about that, and
He's
I
planted a
think
seed in my head now, and I can't get it out. Go
and
ahead.
I think the big difference on whether you like it or not there is whether or not you buy the shooting. Um, and from a spot up perspective, from a catch and shoot, just off ball scoring perspective, um, I think he'll be fine enough. And then from there, you leverage that athleticism and you pair that athleticism with Duran and Ivy, and just the playmaking of Cade. I don't know what else there is to not or I don't know what there is to not like about that fit with him. Troy Weaver loves his freak athletes. Hey, Cam Whitmore, freak athlete. He's not going to be asked to do any offensive creation or playmaking on that team because Ivy and Kate are going to have the ball. He's a good cutter. They'll be able to find him. I think they'll be able to set him up pretty consistently with really easy buckets. He gives them a lot of athleticism on the perimeter on the defensive end. Um, there'll obviously be some inconsistencies like there are with all young players on that end. But I think Monty Williams is an awesome guy who has a pretty good track record of it, elevating players and installing the system and getting everyone on that team to buy into it. So with the the brain of Cade Cunningham and then that athleticism, the youth, the structure now and the coaching staff. I still really like that fit. I love him in Indiana. I even like him in Orlando. Outside of that, we start looking at Washington, Utah. Don't love those. Dallas at 10, I kind of like, but not. I don't love. So for me, it's really that 5, 6, 7 range where I think would be the absolute best for him.
I'm back in on Washington. They're going to do some good plans. We're going to turn you around to become a Washington Wizards
Yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath.
believer. I will. Okay. I'm good with doing Detroit. Bullion for everyone that was waiting on pins and needles. He has a $20 million contract for an upcoming year. Then he has a partially guaranteed the following year. So you're not passing up any talent because of Bullion, as much as I love the bogeyman. I still like Whitmore. It would be more surprising if Whitmore was on the board and they didn't go that direction, unless they, Jarris is somehow there and they love him. But I think Whitmore fits in a lot of places because you get excited about the upside. You get excited about the tools he has. And in that range we're talking about, Metcalf, like if he went to Orlando somehow, they have a lot of pieces that he can be the complementary piece. They have Paulo, they have Franz. If he goes to Indiana, I love that fit because they got Halliburton, they got Mathurin, and then all of a sudden you add Whitmore. Like, woo, that is a nasty 1 through 3. Who knows? I mean, I know I brought up Houston before. I don't know. The Houston one probably doesn't make a ton of sense unless you're buying in on Jabari as a 4, which I still am. I know a lot of people like to say he should be a 3. I think he's a 4 that can play on the perimeter, but we're getting off topic. So I don't know. I like Whitmore a lot. I think he's going to be eye candy during these workouts. And a lot of people are going to be very intrigued with the nastiness, the power, and just if you believe the rest of the tools can come together, this is a player that I believe can be one of the top wings when it comes to this class, especially.
Completely agree. But before we move on, let's take our last break. Okay, so the next name we have is a guy that we talked about just a couple weeks ago. His stock has been absolutely exploding. Leonard Miller.
You start.
Oh God.
Okay, well, we don't have to go into detail because we just did a pod about him. And everyone's heard us talk nonstop about Leonard Miller, and I don't want to hammer it home too much because we just did a pod about him. But another popular name, I will say this to everyone, that the draft maniacs out there, NBA fans that are getting serious about this. A lot of these teams are going to bring in a lot of guys for group workouts. I don't think I would weigh too much of that, but I would also weigh what teams it is. And I keep seeing Leonard Miller, and it's, Indiana. They've got multiple picks. And then you start seeing him with teams that might be in the late teens. And all of a sudden you start seeing it go up. And it's like, that could tell you some stuff if you're following breadcrumbs of like, that's where teams thinking like, hey, this might be an option for us. Now, obviously they're doing these group workouts, and it's 3 guys that might go in the first round and 2 guys that they're going in the second round. It's kind of all over the place because it's probably travel arrangements and players are trying to figure out where they can go. But he's going to be, everyone's asking about Leonard Miller. I get guys, Thunder fans ask me about Leonard Miller at 12. And I'm like, wow, I thought we put that bed 2 weeks ago, and it's really coming back. Raptors fans are asking. It's wild. I think I understand why teams and fan bases are going to be really excited, but still trying to find that fit, Metcalf. I'm still trying to find it. And give me some positivity about Leonard Miller, and then we can move on. Talk to everyone that wants some positivity from guys that have been a little bit more lower on him. Where are you at? Why do you think it will work if it does?
Because he had just an astronomical leap in production and improvement on the court.
And I don't think he's done improving.
No.
I think exactly. He has 2 more levels to go.
Exactly.
It's just, can he find it?
This was the most structured he's actually played in, the most organized basketball he's actually played in, the most he was held accountable, the most he's been coached, and it paid off a ton. I didn't think there was a chance in hell he would get drafted last year. I loved once he said he was going to the Ignite. I thought it was going to be great for him.
Preach.
And that he proved that he was able to take a massive step back and roll because before this year, he was this pseudo point guard and doing just whatever the fuck he wanted on ball. It turned into some fun highlights, but it turned into a lot of really unproductive and inefficient basketball as well. This year, he played like a legit power forward, small ball center role and didn't really have any creation responsibilities. And just mucked things up around the rim and was a play finisher and a rebounder and was just really focused on improving defensively. And he did all of that by leaps and bounds. I just think there's a lot more that it needs to go. And I'm not quite sure how close he is to really achieving that, or if this last year and that huge leap that he had was almost it for him. And if so, that's still a really good role player, good energy guy. I can't get to the lottery stuff with him. I think there are still so many holes in his game that need a lot of work, and they're not just like masking over a couple things here and there. It's completely reworking the shot. It's really honing in again on the defensive rotation stuff. And I think it's going to be fascinating whatever team takes him if they try to pivot him more towards a wing or a kind of big role. If they try and use him more as like that true forward small ball center, I like that outcome a lot more for him rather than if they try to use him as a rangy for, switchable 3 type guy. I just don't think he moves like that.
This is one of my favorite prospects because of this reason. You can be out on Leonard Miller and try to talk yourself into it.
Yeah.
And at some point be like, it makes sense. Like, this makes sense why I would buy into it. Me and Metcalf could sit here and talk about everything that he potentially could like project to do awesome at the next level. And I still will be like, I don't think I'm, there as a lottery guy. It's just, if I got him at like 20, I'd be probably pretty pumped if that was my like, hey, I'm in. I'm buying into the Leonard Miller experience. It's drawn plenty of really intense conversations with the No Ceilings group chat, and I know everyone doesn't love to hear it, but it's fantastic when we have some of those because you really like everyone pushes some buttons, and we're trying to like almost open our minds to everyone's thinking. Because I'm like, what am I seeing wrong? What are you guys seeing? If you're loving him, why are you seeing it that way? And then I'm like, well, Metcalf always comes out of nowhere and he's like, but what about this? And I'm like, oh gosh, here we go, the time bomb. And every time I do one of those, I'm like, I see it. And then I look at my board and I'm like, I don't know if I'm moving him up though. Like I was just like, I've seen it as the same boat as you. As I'm like, I wish they would play him as kind of that Kevon Looney, just clean up stuff around the basket. Corey's told us we're crazy.
I don't care.
And I'm fine with that because I'm just saying, like, I think he has fantastic hands around the basket. Like, he has that great ability to keep his hands up. And
yeah, I thought his verticality was really good this year.
It's really good. I mean, we see by the numbers. He averaged almost 17 and 10 with 53, 30, 79, according to the NBA G League site. Please don't come after me. Go complain to them. And had an effective field goal percentage of 56.5. Really good numbers.
Yeah.
Very, very good numbers. I just want him around the basket. And the problem is, Corey had a good point. He was like, is he too thin framed? And then me and you were like, dude, we put some weight on him. And then Corey's like, no, because that's good. And I was like, that's where you're at, where I'm like, already we're trying to figure out the fit. And it just goes back in a circle. But unbelievable year, remarkable stride and improvement.
Yeah.
And the reason I wanted to bring him up again in this episode is because I think there's such a high ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
There is a path in which we look back in 2 years and be like, Leonard Miller is a weapon for someone. Like, he is a really good asset to have. And we'll see. There's also the other side of the fence, but that conversation happens with every prospect.
Okay. Next name we have is Nick Smith Jr., a guy who I've had anywhere from 5 to about almost 40 on my board this year. I have run the complete gambit of emotions with him. Some of the lottery stuff that he's getting now, I can't get behind. Some of the people that are dropping him out of the first round, which I at one point did, I also can't get behind. He's just one of the biggest headaches for me. Where are you at with him?
My thing is, this is where the time of the year where the buzz and everyone's hearing things and it starts to get interesting and you start to notice some trends. And now we're seeing Nick Smith creeping up a little bit on some boards, which then drives me crazy because I'm like, all right, let's get the phone out. Let's start talking to some people. And I have vibes he's going to go top 20 still. I think people are going to buy into pre-college film. It happens all the time. Like, I talk to scouts all the time that literally say, like, you can't judge everything off of 1 year. And Nick Smith had all the buzz in the world. I mean, we're talking about a preseason top 5 pick. The problem is Zaire Williams and Jaden McDaniels are 2 players I hated their film. I hated their film. And I was just like, I like the tools. I like the idea. I really think these guys have potential to be something special. But watching their film in college, I hated it. Absolutely hated it. I've never enjoyed anything less. And then I watched Jaden McDaniels and what did you say? No. Kai Jones was electric. You kidding me? And like Jaden, I'd watch defensive stuff just to balance me out because I'd be like, I think there's defensive potential here. Well, looks like I was right there. But offensively, it was just all over the place. Nick Smith Jr.'s film this year is at that same dinner table with those 2 because it's frustration, because I'm constantly really excited about him wanting to do something else on the court where I'm like, okay, can I get another level? Like, now one more thing, like show me something else. And I never feel like I'm full. Like, I'm always feel like it's one of those water glasses where the water just keeps falling out. Like, there's a hole in the glass. And every time I pick it off the table, it's just draining. Because I watched game, or who was it against? Was it against Oklahoma when it was, who was it against? He looked great one game I watched.
Yeah, and he had a couple down the stretch of the regular season where he looked awesome. So my big thing is that everyone keeps saying, go back to the high school stuff, go back to the high school stuff. And I get that, but every time I go back to the high school stuff, it doesn't look all that different. And what is so frustrating for me is that with so many times with guys of that pedigree, with those expectations, a lot of the frustrations are effort stuff. And, it's like, oh, he's just going through the motions. He doesn't really care. Um, and that's not what I get with Nick Smith at all. Like I think his work rate is really high. He feels like a guy who wants to be a good defender. He just has no idea what he's doing on that end. So I don't know how that's a new kind of conundrum for me to kind of face, because it's like I rarely have that issue where a top guy is working that hard and producing as inefficiently as he was. And I'm sure people will come at me with other examples, but off the top of my head.
I was thinking of the Kentucky and Auburn games. I'm sorry. And he had a 2-game stretch where he had 19.5 points per game with shooting splits of 45-38. And I was like, I feel like at that point of the year, I was like, is this happening? Is this it? Like, are we getting a little 8-game heater? Everyone that is going to act like we're saying like we know everything. But me and you had this episode at the beginning of the year. I talked and I was like, he's frustrating to me because I don't know if I see the floor general. And then I watched him at the Nike Hoop Summit and he made a pass. And I was like, my goodness, I don't see that pass much. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm in. And I was like, I have him lower, but I guess I'm in. And it's my gut instinct I didn't go with that is coming back now. And I'm like, okay, I'm out. But I still have him in the first. And every time I look at him, I'm like, do I need to go back and reevaluate? But like, I just think this isn't the floor general you're handing the ball to run the offense. I think he's playing off the ball with a combo guard and probably sharing a backcourt. And who knows? Maybe Nick Smith turns into this Jordan Clarkson, spark plug that really can get lethal from outside. And sort of that's his path early on in which he develops the rest of his game. Like, everyone looks good in workout videos. I don't know, Metcalf, because I still think there is a world in which he makes a lot of us look silly. I still think he could go out and probably not be so stressed with all those expectations. Arkansas just kept waiting for him to come back. He was always battling injuries.
And to his credit, he kept coming back.
Yes. And a lot of guys would have shut down.
Yeah.
And you could argue that if he shut down early, he might have gone top 10.
Yeah.
Like, that's the annoying part of this process is he might have gone it without scouts seeing all these questions and being like, I don't know. Like, but he kept back and you got to give him credit for that. And there's a lot of wiggle and like some exciting stuff that how healthy was he? That's what we got to ask. How healthy was he? Was it the system? Was it a perfect storm of just disaster? And if you agree with that, then maybe Nick Smith is going top 20. And if some team thinks that, maybe they're saying, hey, we get him in the top 15, we're going to be pumped. He is the wild card. He's literally the definition of a wild card for this draft.
Yeah, and the last name on our list is very similar in that regard with Gigi Jackson, who, everyone knows reclassified, super young for this class, should be going into his college freshman season. Things just continue to seemingly continue not to go right for him. And Wasserman had was a Q&A or live mock draft that he did today, and I believe you texted the group saying that he didn't have GG in the first round.
No GG in the first round there. Gavoni had a mock. I think he had him in the second round. Gavoni promoted his updated rankings today and had him in the 30s, like with his big board rankings. And everyone's like, well, what are those guys? Those guys are plucked. We're at No Ceilings. We have our connections. We have our guys that's growing every year. But, respect to the big dogs, like they have been grinding and doing this and building their network much longer than us. So what I've always said is like, that's breadcrumbs. When you see jumps and rankings, that's breadcrumbs left around, and people will be like, that doesn't tell, it tells a lot. It is a silent truth that tells a lot. And if you start connecting the dots, like we're rooting for Gigi. I think he still has some of the top talent in this whole class, because when he's cooking offensively, I'm like, he moves in a way not a lot of prospects do. And I just think this is probably getting some territory in which some stuff's coming up. And you don't have to agree with it, but it is executives and front office decision makers that are probably talking about it. And that's the buzz. And this happens. This happens with a lot of guys where maybe if you interview, and I'm not reporting anything, but maybe if you interview bad or something goes bad, or that gets around like a wildfire. If he's on the board in the late 20s, I don't think a team's passing up on Gigi.
God, no.
Unless it's just terrible, but that's too much talent. I've seen guys fall that have upside that teams at some point are like, no, we'll take it from here. Like, that's our type of guy. So I don't know, Metcalf. Sorry, I went on a little rant there.
No, it's good. And he has all of the tools that you want from your 6'8" power forward. And just great on-ball shot creation. I think he's going to shoot at a really high clip. I think most of the percentage issues were shot selection stuff. Again, kind of similar to Cam Whitmore. It's all of it in a vacuum in his own individual little silo. It looks good on highlight tape. It looks good in one-on-ones. It looks good in empty gyms. When you get into that team concept, that's where it gets really tricky. And one of the big concerns with him coming out of the regular season was the immaturity issues with what he posts on Instagram and some of the body language stuff on court and all of that kind of stuff. All of the leaks and reporting out of these individual workouts and all of that kind of stuff is that he's not doing himself any favors in interviews, and that his workouts are a fraction of the speed of everyone else's, and that he looks out of shape. It just feels like he kind of keeps shooting himself in his own foot. Whereas if he would have just came in shape, busted his ass during these workouts, and who knows, I'm sure there are plenty that he's doing great in, but those reports aren't the ones that are coming out.
I think he was
probably
sick.
because those teams want to take him. So they're not going to be like, hey, Gigi rocked for us. Teams ahead of us should look at him. So I get that. But if you would have just nailed all of this stuff, it would have quelled a lot of the concerns that people had about him coming into this kind of period.
And I think he was sick. I'm not trying to, I think he was sick. But here's the unfortunate reality of the draft process. You could be sick, but you're trying to leave an impression on, it is a job interview before you even get interviewed.
Yeah.
And you're trying to leave an impression that basically makes all these teams and scouts be like, I need to talk to him. I need to go watch him. We need to bring him in. And if you fail at that first one, and I'm not saying you did, but if you don't leave a good impression, that buzz can push you the opposite way. Now, I think a smart organization would probably run with that buzz and say, we might have a shot at Gigi Jackson now.
Yeah.
And bring him in. And maybe he was sick and then comes in and has a awesome workout. And some teams just like, no one say jack crap about how Gigi just played, and we're going to steal him.
Or even just say that he looked awful.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, now it's a poker game.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to bring guys in, and obviously there's leaks of like, oh, here's our workouts, or people are reporting it. But there's always secret workouts. There's always these, oh, he went to go work out. They try to get him to work out, I'm trying to forget one year someone like literally worked out like the night before the draft. And I was like, what? Like, it was just like, it happens. And I think Gigi has all the tools. We've said it. We've praised him. We've said this all the time. He has a lot of questions. He has so much talent. And we're not just saying this off of, what we read on the line. I've heard this from people. People will be like, yeah, I can't stand Gigi's shot selection. And when they're that emphatic with saying to me, like, you cannot stand it, I'm like, oh boy, okay, that's pretty aggressive. And then we've heard other people be like, it's the worst. And it's like, we have to remember the upside, the age, a lot of stuff's weighing into this. But the positives is he's got all that working for him of being a young kid. There's going to be some executive that sees the talent, and someone's at one point going to be like, we bring Gigi in here and get him to click. We are going to look very smart in a couple of years if everything falls into place. So,
yeah, and we obviously want all these guys to hit the ceilings that we've been talking about. They're incredibly talented, and if they do, that's better for them. That's better for us. We all get
yes.
better basketball out of that. That's what we're rooting for. Just real quick, Rucker, anyone in the second round, names where, most kind of consensus rankings have them in the second round, but if a lot of things go right, could really hit that really outlandish ceiling that they could have.
Projected in the second round. I mean, Andre Jackson is probably in that conversation. Noah Clowney's probably one I'm struggling with. Where do you have him?
36.
Okay, I got him like early 40s. I get it. I get the idea. I get the intrigue. He's one of those boomer bust guys to me, and I don't think it's going to be right away. I think we're going to have to look down the road in 3 years and be like, no, Clowney's really turning into something solid. Who else? Do you have someone off the top of your head?
Brandon Podziemski, and
Pods
he's
is
just. I know this is very, 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 very lofty and like absolute best case scenario. I just get some Jalen Brunson vibes when I watch him play. Just the physicality, the mid range kind of floater scoring touch stuff.
I talked to a front office exec about him, and he's just like, so many people are on the fence. Like,
Yeah.
so many people are confused. They don't know what to do. And I that's the first time I've heard someone just be like confused. Like, everyone's like, some people like him, some people are out. And I was like, oh boy. And it was after the combine, which I was like, I thought he looked great. And I don't know. But it was that second game. I think people were like, I don't know now. And it's like, oh, that's where your agent was like, man, why don't you listen to me? But I had heard J Dub, I think, called him, was like, play. And I was like, oh gosh. But
I think Julian Phillips is a guy who could have OG Anunoby type future.
yes. Oh, Julian Phillips is a great one. I'm right there with you with that. Bobby Clintman.
Yeah.
Kind of heard some rumblings about a first round promise, so that's one to watch out for. The Julian Phillips one is really good. I'm glad you brought that up. Jordan Walsh, maybe.
Yeah, I'm lower on Walsh.
I am
but
too, but I feel like he could become this really, really special defensive asset. I don't know. Amari Bailey, some people will say, but I don't know if I'm there saying that he's got that super high ceiling.
Yeah, I
Where's
don't
my
think it's quite
ceiling
that
guy?
high.
I had one before Metcalf, and then I'll say TJD. I still think he's got an NBA ceiling that's higher than where he was in college. I think he could be a very impactful presence.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Rucker. This was a blast as always. Plug away.
I love you all. Go get the No Ceilings draft guide. The support has been incredible. It's been awesome. It's worth it. It's going to get bigger each year. I'm at Tyler_Rucker. Shoot me a message. Let's talk some draft. And I have no basketball to watch now. I know the finals are on, but I'm all in for No Ceilings. This is what I do. I just turn into, Hannibal Lecter and focus on draft and have some fun graphics coming out soon. So thank you guys as always. We love you guys. We're excited about the growth. And Metcalf, one more year for Bona and Trey, baby. We just gotta wait one more year.
People are gonna be so pumped about another year of my propaganda for them.
Hey,
But
I mean to tell you one thing before I get off. We're gonna make a bonus shirt. We're gonna figure out a way. It's gonna be glorious, and then I'm gonna be wearing it on the pod all the time next year. So there you go.
all right, well, once again, I'm Tyler Metcalf. You can follow me on Twitter at Team Metcalf11. DMs are always open if you ever want to talk hoops. Merchandise. We got a whole bunch of new merchandise along with the draft guide that all dropped at noceilingsnba.bigcartel.com. You can also find all of our written work that is 100% free at noceilingsnba.com. And you can follow us across all socials at noceilingsnba. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and a 5-star rating. Until next time, see ya.